Welcome. You are watching Fox Nation's lunchtime wrap-up of the Depp Heard trial. And boy, a lot of activity closer to the end there. We've been having a little fun with that, too. I'm Lauren Green, your host. I want to bring in the team, the brilliant lawyers, Vinoo, Varghese, and Ken Belkin. I want to thank you for being here.
Thanks
We've
for
been
having
having a great time. Great to have you here.
You
guys are brilliant, so I'm going to really test you with this, because you've been watching this trial, and we've all been watching this. You know, we've been sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, what happened? So Ken, you go first. What is your impression, just basically what's happened this morning?
I love Dr. Spiegel. I mean, he's got a PhD. He's got a PhD in sitting on the stand for hours and not answering a single question. I don't think he answered this. They're mostly yes or no questions on cross-examination. I mean, I heard him say, if you want to phrase it that way, then yes. If I asked you if you had chicken for dinner last night, would you say, if you want to phrase it that way, yes? It's absurd.
Oh my goodness. Vinoo, what do you think? What's kind of the wrap-up of what's happened?
I think that this guy may have changed the trial in Amber Heard's favor.
Really?
I think to this point, assuming that you believe all the pundits like Ken and me, that Johnny Depp was winning, right? Or at least public opinion.
The public opinion really does have him.
Has him way ahead right now.
Yeah.
But I think this guy may have just turned the tide for Amber Heard. He was dominant today. He made that attorney, like Ms. Varghese was credited for her cross-examination of Amber Heard and how well she did. This is the exact opposite. I teach trial skills to Harvard law students. And so one of the things that a tenet of cross-examination, a basic premise is control your witness. Just as what Ken was saying, just as what he was just saying, this guy, you know, is just talking, right? He's talking, but he's dominating, and he's getting shots in every single time. He has turned this attorney, and you have to see Varghese's face. I mean, all of a sudden it's changed. Johnny Depp took off his glasses because at some point she went over, hey, maybe you want to look more human here, you know? And it doesn't look good, because if for the first time in this trial, it appears now that the tide has shifted a bit.
I mean,
more than a bit.
I'm curious because one of the things that he's done is brought out this idea of the, what is it, the disorder, you know, this whole idea of, you know, the abuse disorder. Like, there's just some abusive personality disorder. And he has given credibility to Heard's statement about what he did. It's almost textbook. I mean, Ken, I mean, this is, what do you think when Vinoo says he's made it in her favor?
I don't know. It's hard to anticipate if he's made it in her favor, but certainly he's drawn attention to the fact, and I tried to draw attention to this when I talk about it, that Johnny Depp's substance abuse issues, they are a real issue. And I don't think the public, or the jury for that matter, really had any inclination of how bad his substance abuse is. And the reality is, people who abuse cocaine, people who are drinking too much, they are more prone to have what they characterize as intimate partner violence incidents. And it just makes sense. If someone's coked out and drunk, they are more likely to use very poor judgment and do terrible things.
I'm a little bit surprised they started talking about ecstasy in the courtroom. And Vinoo, I mean, this whole idea of MMDA, which I didn't know that's what it was called, and I did know that it was not FDA.
It's a line of a Jay-Z song. Come on, MDMA.
You know what? I'm just not part of it. They're talking about what's the normal dosage of ecstasy, and I'm thinking, isn't it illegal?
Right.
I mean, you have a normal. Why would he ask a question like that?
I think the lawyer seems to be prepared in the sense that he knows that he can attack what this psychiatrist is saying, Dr. Spiegel is saying. Like, he's prepared in terms of facts, but he's got no delivery. It's like a comedian who tells a joke that doesn't go anywhere, doesn't understand how to give a delivery. So what's happened is that Spiegel has turned everything back on this guy. I mean, he's sitting there like they brought in.
He's combative, really. I mean, he's actually asking the attorney questions. What do you mean by that?
And he's mocking him. He's taking shots at him. He goes, well, I don't know if you said that, but I know you did. So he's just taking shots over and over. And he's doing, we were talking last week when I was here, talking about the fact that Amber Heard is looking at the jury, right? Well, that's not proper for her, but it is proper for a professional witness to talk to the jury. So he's turning around, talking to them. He's engaging in conversation, and he's mocking this guy. So right before his direct closed, his attorney asked him about the Goldwater Rule, basically saying that you shouldn't be commenting on public figures, and it was set for presidency. You know, it was regarding a commentary on a president or anything along those lines.
Right.
But what he did was he flipped it around on him and basically said that if you take this, then the problem is that you eliminate all of forensic psychiatry, any expert testimony. And so he had an easy answer, the psychiatrist. He could have just said, hey, it doesn't apply to court. Psychiatrist, to forensic psychiatrist. But instead, he went on this whole explanation to basically make this guy look foolish. He's not controlling his witness.
Out of control, totally out of control.
Vinoo brings up a good point. There's a dynamic between these two, between the attorney and the psychiatrist. And I got to the point where thinking, this is not about the testimony. This is about winning. This is about these two sort of being able to one-up each other. And the attorney seems like he's losing right now.
This is an ego match, and it feels like this attorney might be getting paid by the word that comes out of his mouth. He should have been surgical. Vinoo hit the head. He has lost control of this witness. He needs to establish this guy is a hired gun. He has not examined Johnny Depp in any clinical sense of the word. He is a hired gun. He is there to spin, to not answer questions, to ask the attorney questions, apparently, and to really help prove Amber Heard's case and/or her defense.
But how normal is that? Either one of you can answer this. How normal is that they would bring in a witness that has no connection to the actual person that they're talking about? I mean, you've got Johnny Depp, and you've got two witnesses. We'll get to Dr. Moore a little bit later, but we've got two witnesses that are giving all this expert testimony, and I'm thinking, oh, they know, they've heard. They've actually talked to or examined, then find out they've never examined him.
Yep.
How likely is that? I mean, how often does that happen in an actual trial where the expert they bring in has no connection to the person they're talking about?
It's actually, they can base it upon records, and that's what he's saying. He doesn't actually have to have examined Mr. Depp, because they're not going to allow Mr. Depp to be examined by this guy or anybody from the other side. Now, so what he's doing is saying, based upon what I've read, what I've been presented, here's what I'm coming up with. That he's got traits of narcissistic personality disorder, that he's got substance abuse disorder, and then basically throwing it out there, and the attorney has basically has bit on the line, and then he gets to explain more, and this is a classic case of, again, not controlling a witness. At no point this attorney should have said, when he's going off, you got to say, Judge, it's a yes or no question.
Yeah,
okay?
Absolutely.
It's a yes or no question. Move to strike as non-responsive. Once you've established who's in control, that witness becomes more pliable. That witness will control himself. Then you get the judge on your side to say, I'm sorry, doctor, can you please limit your testimony and answer the question? If you can't answer the question yes or no, then say so. And we'll give your attorney an opportunity in redirect to ask the question and let you explain more. But this is out of hand, and I think now Heard may have turned the tide. It's interesting to watch Johnny Depp taking off his sunglasses and start looking and trying to stare him down. I don't know if that was an intimidation tactic.
Okay.
And because you haven't seen that, at least I haven't, him take off his sunglasses during the trial.
He feels like he's in control.
Well, he's not in control anymore.
Well, let's run a tape of the Dr. Spiegel testifying that Depp showed behavior of domestic violence as a perpetrator. Take a watch.
Dr. Spiegel, could you please just summarize for the jury the conclusions you came to with your opinions, and then we'll take you through the specifics.
So, in my opinion, based on my review of the evidence, based on my clinical experience, based on my publishing experience, based on my teaching experience, that Mr. Depp has behaviors that are consistent with both someone who has a substance use disorder as well as consistent behaviors for someone who is a perpetrator of intimate partner violence.
Thank you. I'm going to start with the impact of drug and alcohol abuse over time. First of all, based upon your review of the record evidence, what type of drugs has Mr. Depp used?
So, Mr. Depp, and I'm talking about use, we're talking about a substance use disorder here. We're not just talking about use, okay? So we are talking about alcohol, we are talking about amphetamines, we are talking about marijuana, we are talking about cocaine, We are talking about LSD. We are talking about ecstasy. We are talking about opiates. We are talking about prescription benzodiazepines. And we'll get into a separate thing about the abusability of Seroquel and or gabapentin in Iran. And we are talking about much of the time concurrent use, meaning simultaneously.
Okay, what he's trying to establish is that there is a relationship between substance abuse and intimate partner violence. Has he done that? Has this witness done that for Heard?
I'd say absolutely he's established the connection, but he has not established that it applies to the specific facts of this case. He should be hammering him. You did not clinically diagnose Johnny Depp, did you? But, you know, you listen to the way Dr. Spiegel speaks. He says traits consistent with. He's basically giving a diagnosis without giving a diagnosis, having never interviewed this person, having never formally assessed him.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's very interesting when the doctor talked about is that Johnny Depp is human. We all are human. Humans, human brains are affected by drugs. Johnny Depp has taken drugs. This is like see Jane, walk, the kind of thing. He actually is bringing this into the courtroom that Johnny Depp has a substance abuse issue, and this is the correlation. And that's what I want to say. How is the jury affected by that, Vinoo? I mean, how do they understand? Okay, I've got a cousin, that has a little drug abuse problem, and sometimes he slaps around his wife. I don't know. I mean, there've got to be some. I mean, everybody in a relationship, everybody in a family has some sort of relationship or some sort of knowledge of someone who might be a little bit like that. So,
I actually think he's done a very good job of tying it together with what he said. I think, Ken, you're being a little hard on him, because you're looking at it from the point of clinical.
He's not answering any questions.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
Crazy.
But what he's done is now said at a certain point in his testimony today, he said that more than 50% of substance abusers end up engaging in intimate partner violence. And when pressed on that, the attorney looked surprised by that number. He wasn't ready for that. And then at some point, the doctor took it further. He said, in fact, if you do more drugs you use, it can go up to 70%. He said something along those lines. So in essence, Johnny Depp loses if Amber Heard was telling the truth, right? So there's no defamation if Johnny Depp did abuse her.
But why aren't we talking about, why isn't either the Heard's attorneys, at least they should bring this up, or Depp's attorneys saying, what is he like when he's not drinking and when he's not doing this? I mean, one of the things that they are...
He's always
that's the thing. One of the things that we talk about, AA people talk about is that, is a mean drunk or is a nice drunk? Alcohol enhances the personality that's already present.
Agreed.
Right?
100%.
So have they established that somebody who is in control when they're sober is not in control when they're drunk? And can you find the evidence in the sober person that is a direct trajectory to the meaner, abusive person?
I think his lawyer has made it worse for Depp. Because basically he's like saying, well, they were talking about a test, a 30-point test or something, that he scored 27 out of 30 on this test, including dealing with memory. And he's like, well, you don't know if Johnny Depp was drunk or was under the influence. How is that helping, right? So the more that you focus on how bad Depp's problems were, he's basically saying that this is an excuse, this is what he was. But the reality is, if while on drugs, while on alcohol, whatever cocktail that he was using of drugs, he beat Amber Heard, well, then she wins, right? If the jury believes that.
Well, that's the key issue now. Ken, you want to talk about what does the jury believe?
I was going to say, yeah, 40, 60% of intimate partner violence incidents have a correlation with alcohol or drugs, but it's just a correlation. Now, we also know that Johnny Depp was a major, marijuana smoker. Marijuana smokers are not really known for being particularly violent. They are known for getting the munchies and, taking naps. I don't know that we've really established that he's this violent psychopath because the statistics line up that way. You know, there's still another 50% of people that do not engage in intimate partner violence.
Right, it's like saying, because you own a gun, you're going to go out and kill somebody. It doesn't add up all the time.
Yeah, it's a correlation. It's a mistaking it for causation.
Yeah, but here, when you're talking about it, I don't think it's just marijuana that Johnny Depp.
No, but he did have pounds and pounds, tens of pounds. Sure. Amber Heard said.
Before we move on to the finger, though, let's talk about narcissism. When they brought up he's a narcissist, it's like he's an actor.
Yeah, it comes with the turf.
I think it kind of comes with the territory. But there is a level of narcissism that is sort of clinical, and that can be very derogatory and actually affect the relationships. And here you've got the narcissistic personality that appears to be Johnny Depp, the jealousy, the controlling, that you have to bow down to me. It's really a sense of authority that I need to be the person you worship all the time, and this is part of the narcissistic behavior. Is that as crucial as the drug abuse and the substance abuse and all of it, and the alcohol and all of that? Is that a big deal?
See, I don't like the fact that it seems to me like he is rendering a diagnosis here. And, Johnny Depp's attorneys did bring up the Goldwater Rule. American Psychological Association said in 1973 that you cannot make a diagnosis of someone you have not clinically assessed. And they did it because hundreds of psychologists were saying Barry Goldwater can't be president. He's going to start World War III. He's crazy. But they didn't diagnose him. They never assessed him. Right. And I think that plays a role here. He is essentially saying, oh, he has 5 of the traits in the DSM-5, but I'm not rendering a diagnosis. I'm not rendering a diagnosis.
All this clinical talk, DSM-5 and MMDA. Go ahead.
On the narcissism point, right? And by the way, the bunch.
Don't point to me.
No, not you. You're the most empathetic guy. On the narcissism point, that came up several years ago with President Trump. A bunch of psychologists were violating the Goldwater Rule, but he spoke about, and I took notes while he was talking. He talked about narcissism, and he used words, which you see as someone who has a lack of empathy, a craving for power, and a large sense of entitlement. So your question was, what does this matter, or is this important to bring up? I think it is, because you're further painting this guy to the extent that you would excuse him for his drug abuse, right? And say, oh, he's an addict. When you start talking about a narcissist, these are not nice people. These are very bad people in general.
I dated one once, right? a narcissist.
I think we all have, right? In New York City, of course.
Absolutely.
So the point of it is that when you start talking about it, you're like, to the extent that any juror's thinking, you know what? This Amber Heard, she got, she was involved in it. She's this and all that. Now you're starting to think, well, maybe Johnny Depp's really a bad guy. To the extent that you were Team Depp, right, or Justice for Johnny, right? I think he's done a lot of good for Amber Heard today.
Well, I think the whole trial's done a lot of good for her, because we were talking about before last week that I don't know how many people actually heard of Amber Heard, or she was certainly not a household name before this trial came out. Amber who? And so I think the idea that...
You watch Aquaman?
I didn't even know... I did watch Aquaman. I still didn't know her name.
I like
it wasn't... It wasn't an explosive kind of impact she had on my life. So okay, Amber Heard. I want to move to the finger, because that's what started out today. Dr. Richard Moore, he testified that Johnny Depp injured his finger, but the idea was that it was not caused by a thrown bottle. Now, before we go to the tape, the idea is that he injured his finger in Australia, and he's accused Amber Heard of throwing a vodka bottle on him, and it injured his finger and explosions and all that sort of thing. So they were trying to deal with the finger and what actually happened. And Dr. Moore testified that his finger, the injuries were not caused by a thrown bottle. Take a listen.
Dr. Moore, is this one of the images that you reviewed?
Yes.
Tell us, in relation to your expert opinion on the cause of Mr. Depp's injury, tell us what you see in this picture, please.
So this is looks like an avulsion type injury where tissue's actually pulled or pinched away. I think what's important in this picture is that the tissue loss is on the palmar aspect from underneath the finger, rather than all transversely in the finger, which you would anticipate if the bottle struck the finger. You would expect more of this this level of injury rather than isolated to the palmar aspect. And the nail's not elevated. There's no subungual hematoma beneath it, or there's no bruise underneath it. Anyone that's ever stuck their finger in a drawer or caught it in a car door or hit it with a hammer knows that almost immediately there's typically bleeding underneath the nail, which creates this hematoma.
So, not being a doctor, I'm going to try to summarize what you just said. Are you saying that in an injury like this, if something had come from the top, that there would be an immediate impact to the fingernail bed?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Dr. Moore, I believe you mentioned just a few minutes ago that there were other pictures that showed more of the nail. Is this one of those pictures?
Yes.
And explain to the jury, again, and I'm sorry for the graphic nature of this photo, but it's important that the jury understands the basis for your opinion that a bottle couldn't have caused this coming in from above.
Yeah, so again, the mechanism described would have almost certainly led to severe nail injury. You know, I see no subungual hematoma. Again, it's a palmar tissue loss, and the loss is from distal to proximal, which is from the tip back far below the nail. And so for it to create that tissue loss down there, there would almost certainly have to be injury dorsally with that described mechanism. So I believe that with the mechanism described, that if the bottle struck the nail, there would have certainly been an injury to the nail bed. And in order for the soft tissue injury to be created by that mechanism, there would have almost certainly been tissue loss on the top of the finger as well.
Does Mr. Depp's description of what happened line up with the undisputed photographic evidence that you've reviewed?
No.
And what do you observe in these x-rays? Explain to the jury what you see.
So these are two views. So one in the plane looking through the finger in this direction, one in the plane looking through the finger sideways. And you can see that the tuft, or the tip of the finger, the last bone in the finger, called the distal phalanx, is shattered. You can see there's multiple little spicules of bone, and there's also a transverse fracture at that level, which runs through the bone. So this is what we would describe as a comminuted fracture, and it's commonly associated with crush injury.
In your decades of practice, Dr. Moore, have you ever seen a comminuted fracture like this result from an object thrown in the way that Mr. Depp described?
Well, not with the constellation of findings shown on the X-ray.
Okay, again, I'm going to apologize for the graphic nature of that photo, but again, that's kind of what they've been showing, and they had to show it to the jury in order for them to understand how Johnny Depp was describing the injury from a bottle of vodka thrown at him in a bar. So, Ken, your idea about why this is significant, why are they going, I don't want to say waste time, but they've got 61 hours of testimony each side. Why are you going to spend 2 hours or something on this guy?
So, you know, this is one of the most crucial aspects of the domestic violence we've heard about. The vodka bottle throwing incident, that he lost the tip of his finger. And it's something that was bandied about a lot, talked about a lot. And I think they needed this expert on there to sort of get the narrative out that says, hey, this is physically impossible, what Johnny Depp is saying. This looks like a crush incident. He said it was a sorry, I'm not a doctor. Comminuted fracture.
I'm glad you had to say
How was that? Pretty good? Comminuted fracture. Well, doctor of law, I guess.
Right.
But a crush incident. It looks like a crush incident. He's never seen a fracture of this kind from something like that. Now, do you want to test that theory out and have someone throw vodka bottles at your finger? No. Probably not. And again, he wasn't there. But he was very credible on this issue, I think.
Right, but also, Vinoo, he also talked about it was more in line, and this is what, you know, the Depp sign kind of wanted to crush, not crush, I guess, there we go, wanted to suppress, was the idea, he said, that this was more in line with an accordion injury, like it got caught in a door someplace. Was he able to actually make that case?
I think he did. I agree with Ken on this, that he's now put a little bit of doubt, I think, into the one of the main claims of Johnny Depp, right? That Amber Heard, did this to Johnny Depp. To me, just without seeing any of this and thinking about it, I was wondering about that. How did a woman almost chop off the finger of an actor?
You'd be surprised.
No, not saying.
I'm just
but
saying,
in the context of what they were saying, a bottle thrown. I can understand if somebody, did this. You have all these movies with somebody's.
But do you want to test that? Are you going to let me throw vodka bottles at your finger?
I don't want to do it.
You get a little steak here. You get a vodka bottle. You throw it. You see how much damage is done.
I almost cut off a chunk of my little finger slicing tomatoes like 7-8 years ago. To this day, and they had to sew it up. It was the most painful thing because they couldn't put any anesthesia there because it was right on the nail, and it was brutal. And they had to and I was like, right? But the point is that looks much worse than my finger ever was.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean,
so that's intense, and it sounded dubious to me that this happened that way.
But then I want to bring up too, because one of the objections of Depp people cross-examining, saying you didn't treat him, but clearly
you don't have to.
Any garden variety person can actually look at the injury and look at the X-rays and think and make some kind of conclusion.
It's more objective than trying to diagnose his personality disorder.
Right.
This is a type of broken bone that you really see in quote unquote crush incidents. You don't see it in a laceration sense with glass.
Yeah. But I also want to bring up this is something that I took offense with. He said they brought up his billing rate. Now, what purpose is it to bring up this witness's billing rate? Oh, I make $1,000 an hour for this, and I make $5,000 a day for testimony in a children's case. What does that do to the jury? Will you explain it to me?
You got to do it. It's the standard expert witness cross-examination.
Really?
You got to get it out that this guy is a hired gun. He does this for a living. He testifies for a living. So don't be fooled by what he has to say, because he wasn't actually there. And remember, a lot of this case is essentially a he said, she said. So the use of expert witnesses is, in a way, a method of papering over that fact and trying to get more credibility onto your side.
Well, we want to bring up another he said, she said, because earlier testimony, not today, but last week, the star witnesses, the celebrity witnesses got in the chair. Ellen Barkin, who used to date Depp in the 90s, I think. She's like 10 years older than him.
She said not date. She wanted to correct the record. A sexual relationship, not romantic. There was no romance there.
We need to start reading this trial rated R, because my goodness. So she had said that she testified that Depp is jealous. He threw a wine bottle at her. Here's a recap of that.
Did there come a time, Ms. Barkin, when Mr. Depp acted in a way that was out of control with you?
Yes. Mr. Depp threw a wine bottle across the room, the hotel room on one instance in Las Vegas while we were shooting Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Was something about to happen?
A fight was going on.
Between you and Mr. Depp?
No.
Who was the fight between?
Between Johnny Depp and his friends in the room, the assistant. Honestly, I don't remember.
And the bottle do you remember sitting here today, Ms. Barkin, whether the bottle was full of wine or empty?
I don't.
Sitting here today, Ms. Barkin, do you remember whether the bottle hit you?
No, it did not.
Did the bottle hit anyone else?
No, it did not.
Approximately how far away from you was Mr. Depp when he threw the bottle?
Across the room, so maybe by that break in the table or a little further down. It was a toss.
And sitting here today, if the bottle had hit you, would it have injured you?
Sure.
Ms. Barkin, was it your understanding back then that he was throwing the bottle at you?
I don't know why he threw the bottle.
And when he threw it, was it in your direction?
Yes.
Was there other people standing around you?
Yes.
So he threw it in your direction at a group of people?
Yes.
Whose hotel room was it?
His, Johnny Depp's.
Who broke off?
He did.
How did it come about that Mr. Depp broke off your relationship?
I went to go home. There was a big goodbye, crying, a lot of jealous, don't do this, don't do that. And I never heard from him again after that.
And did Mr. Depp not want you to go back to Los Angeles at the time?
Yes, he didn't want me to go. I was only supposed to be there for 2 days. I stayed for longer.
And you just referenced, you just used the word jealous. How did that come up? What did he say that indicated to you that he was jealous?
He's just a jealous man, controlling. Where are you going? Who are you going with? What did you do last night? I had a scratch on my back once that got him very, very angry because he insisted it came from me having sex with a person who wasn't him.
During the time that you were in a sexual relationship with Mr. Depp, was it common for him to say things to you about being controlling, to use your words, or being jealous of you?
Yeah, very common.
And when, in these instances, when Mr. Depp became jealous or controlling, did he also become angry?
Yeah.
Jealous, controlling. What does her testimony do?
I mean, really, I want to say to Johnny Depp, brother, you are beautiful. Why are you getting so jealous? What hope do short, bald guys like me have then? But I do think, look, it shows that he again, it hammers home the substance abuse point. This is a guy that is not completely in control of his impulses while under the influence. But I don't know. He threw a wine bottle in a hotel room. Does that mean he's beating his wife? People can break things in a fit of, frustration.
Right.
My cell phone right now is pretty smashed up. And, I don't engage in intimate partner violence. It's just, people get frustrated and take it out on physical objects.
Right.
Doesn't mean they're going to commit physical violence against another human.
What do you think, Vinoo?
I don't think that really hurt him. I mean, I'm looking at her. First of all, why are they allowing this kind of testimony first by deposition versus coming into court live, right? They shouldn't be allowing this kind of this deposition testimony. Second of all, she looks like a mess, right? She doesn't look like that Hollywood starlet that was there.
Not all of us look our best when we don't have makeup on.
But
we're not exactly Brad Pitt.
But part of it, speak for yourself, so, minus the log hair. But part of it, what I'm saying is you would think that she would be better prepared for the deposition. And if I'm Amber Heard's lawyers at this point, like, how much does it help? Okay, somebody famous says that Johnny Depp threw a bottle, but the way she's conveying it is not very convincing. It's very like the way there's no passion to it. Like, man, he did this to me. He can do this to other women. That's what they would hope to have gotten out of her, but that didn't happen.
They're trying to show a pattern that this is the way he is. And you start with Winona Ryder, who said, he was a perfect gentleman. But she's 17 and he's 25. Even though today she says, she supports him. And there are other actors and actresses who are supporting him. What is it? Penelope Cruz, one of the Pirates of the Caribbean actresses. She's supporting him. And then there is another actor from the Pirates of the Caribbean. Greg Ellis, I think his name is. He's on there as well.
Yeah, Orlando Bloom.
They're all supporting him. But one of the things that I think, and I want to ask you if they're doing it, they're trying to show that Johnny Depp is a different person with different people.
Sure.
Have they accomplished that?
I mean, I think we all are different people with different people. Not to repeat myself, but the fact of the matter is that what he did in a hotel room in a drunken stupor in the 90s while filming Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas doesn't dictate what he's going to do, 15 years later in his marriage with the love of his life at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the same thing. What do you think, Vinoo?
I think, look, all that is helpful. Right? And I think they've certainly painted a picture of Amber Heard that's not very flattering. And to have these other people there supporting Johnny Depp and Ellen Barkin's testimony, I don't think was really was persuasive. But today,
it certainly makes headlines.
Right, of course. Another actress saying Johnny Depp did this. But the thing is today, Amber Heard may live to fight another day. And I think that that's really important here, that there was really helpful testimony today from two experts, one medical, one psychiatric. Well, psychiatry is a branch of medicine, obviously, but that really cut into the narrative that Johnny Depp is this good guy, that Amber Heard was this terrible person. Because, again, if he abused her, she wins.
But these are just experts. They're hired guns, you know?
Yeah.
I could pull out $5,000, $10,000 and pay an expert.
I'm sure these guys are charging more.
They could say I'm qualified to play for the New York Knicks. Doesn't make it true, right?
Well, I think, look.
But Johnny Depp has said, he says, I do not have an anger management problem. Now, he has said that he's perfectly fine. There's certain people that say he's a wonderful, loving person. Certainly his daughter thinks, you know, he's loving and wonderful. And she does not like, apparently, Amber Heard. So, I mean, it's... if you have an anger management problem, do you know you have an anger management problem? I mean, I think that's one of the issues, because one of the things that the psychiatrist brought out, Dr. Spiegel, is that perpetrators do not seek help. Perpetrators do not. Victims seek help, but not perpetrators.
So let me pull a Dr. Spiegel and ask you a question.
Okay.
If he had a genuine anger management problem, why is it the best witness that they could produce to show that he's got these impulse controls is Ellen Barkin, who said he threw a wine bottle at a wall? Not at me. Didn't hit me, threw a wine bottle at a wall, wasn't aiming at her. How come that's the best person they could produce? Versus compared to Amber Heard, you've got, you know, a witness, police officer witnesses, might I add, that say she hit her ex-girlfriend in a Seattle airport years ago. And you've got her former best friend, Rocky Pennington, who says she hit her on Thanksgiving.
Well, I think, look, let's flip this a little bit. I mean,
Okay.
that's,
All right.
let's
All
talk
right.
about what
The
you
defense
just brought
steps
up.
in.
Let's just talk about what you just brought up. First of all, you know this as well as I do. A record of an arrest is record of
course,
nothing.
yes, of
Okay,
course.
so anyone who's been arrested, you have so many people in this country who've been arrested, and that doesn't mean they're guilty of something.
Yeah, presumed innocent, but it was witnessed by police
Sure.
officers in an airport. That's...
And you could talk about police officer testimony at the time
true.
and all of this stuff. But what I'm saying is that with Ellen Barkin, you at least, you know, the point is, with Ellen Barkin, it's just another person, right? Now you'd have somebody other than Amber Heard saying Johnny Depp did something. So that's all you need. And then if you actually believe anything that Amber Heard says, well, then you're like, okay, maybe he does have a problem. Then you add into all his substance abuse issues, and you're like you said earlier, we all know somebody, we all know maybe more than one person, more than one person who's got a substance abuse issue who has put fingers or hands on somebody else.
But they could only get one ex-girlfriend to say, hey, he threw a wine bottle and he would ask me where I was going at night.
He's a powerful man in Hollywood. I'm just playing the Amber Heard game.
Why? But why haven't we heard, and maybe we have, and I just didn't pay attention, from Amber Heard's exes? Have we had any testimony from men that she has dated? Now, when in her op-ed, she talked about how she had been abused earlier, even before.
Of her
Johnny
parents,
Depp.
I think, her father.
Right. So, why haven't we heard from any of her exes?
Well,
would that not be a good testimony?
Well, Johnny Depp's lawyers for not finding people.
Well, I think her ex-girlfriend didn't want her charged when she hit her in that Seattle airport anyway, and that's probably why the charges were dropped. It's hard to go forward with a case when you have a victim who doesn't want to cooperate. But, you know, she didn't want to be part of it. But that Rocky Pennington friend, you know, she said she did hit me in the kitchen on Thanksgiving because she accused me of not looking hard enough to find a kitchen utensil. That to me sounds like anger management issues.
A little time there as well. But one of the issues that they're both claiming is that this situation has hurt them in Hollywood, has hurt their professional careers. And that was one of the things that Johnny Depp accused her of, because it is, and his agent, though, his former agent said, you know, no, he was a drunkard. He wouldn't show up at set on time. And we do have a tape from a Disney executive who testified last week that the op-ed had no impact on Depp's roles. Take a listen.
Ms. Newman, I'm going to show you what has been marked as deposition number 60. And it's dated November 5, 2020. And it says Disney reportedly scraps plans for Depp's POTC 6, I'm assuming that's Pirates of the Caribbean 6 Return. You see that? The question was just, did you see it?
Yes, I see it.
As you sit here today, are you aware of any document in Disney's emails or in their IT system or anywhere that contains Amber Heard's op-ed from December of 2018?
I mean, no, not that I'm aware.
Okay. Are you aware of any decision maker within Disney who has ever said they are not casting Johnny Depp in Pirates 6 or any other role because of Amber Heard's op-ed?
No.
Are you aware of any decision maker outside of Disney? And by this, I'm including producers, directors, people of that ilk, who have ever said they were not considering Mr. Depp for Pirates 6 or any other movie because of Amber Heard's op-ed from December 2018?
No.
Okay, I want to get your opinion on the deposition, because obviously no one can cross-examine that deposition because it's recorded. What do you think about that deposition?
I think, first off, it's very hard to get a fair trial, and we should pride ourselves on giving people fair trials in this country when you can't cross-examine a witness, as here. But, you know, they did produce evidence that contradicts what she's saying. And just because she's not aware of an email or not aware of a decision-making doesn't mean that it didn't happen at levels she might be unaware of. And the fact of the matter is, he had an agent, one of his agents testify that this op-ed cost him the role in Pirates of the Caribbean, you know, 60, whatever they're up to, that cost him $22 million. He would have gotten paid $22 million for that role if not for that op-ed. Vinoo, do you agree with that? Because I think that's my issue with this. Like, you know, she's testifying, but because there's no paper trail, it doesn't mean it didn't happen. Right?
Well, I agree with that, but I also I would imagine that there was cross-examination of this witness, because you can't just introduce deposition testimony. There has to be a reason for introducing a deposition testimony. It had to have been subject to cross-examination. So Depp's lawyers would have been able to cross-examine her, and right now that's just one clip, one part of what she was saying. So that wouldn't come in unless there was cross-examination. But in terms of there being no paper trail, I mean, I think that that's actually pretty strong testimony. Now, again, we don't have here what the cross-examination of it was, but there had to have been some cross-examination. So it seems to me, if you can take that, now you have the counter to the agent saying that, no, this Johnny Depp was just sloppy. He was disliked. He was one of these people that was just a terror to work with. Well, then that combined with the stuff that came out today, I think, you know, they're going to have a challenge here. Normally, the lawyers here are going to have a challenge because there's been a shift in this testimony today. So when we talk about trial ed and I teach students at Harvard, I tell them your opening statement is usually the most important part of the trial because you set the stage for the rest of it. Now, that's assuming that you've got all your ducks lined up, right? Now, if you're at a wash, then the summation actually becomes very important. So now it's important for these lawyers to piece together everything and lay it out in a simple way, in a clear way for these jurors. Because this time, most people have their minds made up before closing arguments. It's very rare that you can change somebody's mind. But they may actually be able to do that because you have a tie, at least as far as after today.
You know, they're trying to paint this as some kind of personality disorder. And I remember a couple of years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, there was a story about how Johnny Depp was spending $30,000 a month on wine. Yeah. Now, I would like to hope that it was really good wine and that it wasn't just, you know, $30,000 worth of, you know, like Ripple or something like that. But the idea is that you could spend that much money.
He lived in France, right?
Right, right. And that, you know, he squandered a $600 million, you know, like nest egg of money that he made. He's got some kind of issue there. But is it enough to convict him or find him guilty of spousal abuse.
Yeah, it's a tough one, and I don't know that it is. Someone being a wine aficionado doesn't mean that they're a wife beater. It just doesn't equate to that, you know. And certainly he wasn't drinking Brass Monkey, but. You know, Johnny Depp, he's got issues. No one disputes that. He admits it himself. He has very serious substance abuse issues, and he's tried to get help for it. But now he finds himself in a situation where there's a correlation between his substance abuse issues and intimate partner violence.
Yeah.
Correlation's not causation, though.
Look, I would agree with that, and I think most people, you would think of a wine collector as somebody dignified, right? And he was living in France.
Looks good in a tuxedo.
He's a sommelier, the highest ranking,
and he probably has some massive wine cellar. I don't know, but that does sound excessive. But he's Johnny Depp. He had the money for it, right? That, to me, being an excessive or a person who loves fine wines, because I'm sure it's not the stuff you get in the supermarket, right? So
some of it's probably very good.
I'm sure.
I might not be able to tell the difference of blind taste.
But I bet you, like, again, that doesn't mean that a wine collector is somebody. It means, yeah, he's got some expensive habits, but that doesn't mean that he's guilty or will be found liable here in this case of partner abuse.
About his damages, you know, the $22 million that he missed out on. One thing they could piece together is, you know, use your common sense. Think the past couple of years. How many big Johnny Depp hit movies have you seen since this editorial came out? Not many. And he was really pumping them out before that.
Well, you know, over the weekend, FX showed probably all the Pirates of the Caribbean movies that you could watch. And I'm thinking, you know there's a trial going on, right? That can't be an accident.
It's a perfect time, really.
It's a perfect time. Absolutely perfect time. But I'm wondering, the British libel suit that he filed because the Sun said that he was a wife beater. That was a big headline, wife beater. He lost that. Yes. Now, how does that affect this trial?
Well, they have different laws over there, but the reality is that my understanding, and I'm not a British attorney, I'm not a barrister, but you know, the fact of the matter is that, you know, my understanding is he lost that trial because news media is able to report what other people are saying. You know, the Sun didn't make an objective, you know, you're a wife beater, we have the proof, we've proven it. They were saying that these are the allegations.
I see. So it wasn't about proving that he was a wife beater. It was about saying, hey, it's out there. We're just running with it.
Yeah, we're not the ones saying it. We're reporting it.
Some journalistic integrity there. I mean, you really, I would hope.
I think that has no impact on this case. You know,
right.
So I think here, we're just looking at this in terms of damages. This could be the case, at least when I was here last week before I saw the testimony today. I had thought that in the end it could be basically a tie or he would win and get like $1 in damage.
Right.
Because the reality is Johnny Depp is going to have a career in Hollywood, and so will she, right? He's relevant again. This trial, if nothing else, brought him back into the public eye.
I want 5 more Pirates movies.
But you know what? I'll tell you, the Pirates of the Caribbean, I don't know. I mean, I know it's probably made billions because it's just so popular. You don't make 6 movies, or you're not making the 6th movie without something being really popular. But he actually said, he wouldn't take another pirate movie if you gave him $300 million and 100 million alpacas. Now. And now 300 million and 22 million. I mean, I know there's a big difference, but the idea is that he said
I think he would take it.
I think he would take it. I think he would.
Well, maybe they should offer him wine, not alpacas. I don't know if they read that.
But also, I do know that alpacas. The fans are actually bringing alpacas to the courtroom, to outside the court, and just that's part of the the whole game around the courtroom. But the idea, but what it shows is that he is very popular, and he is there. There is so much fan support for Johnny Depp. He doesn't have to do much to win this. Look at this. We've got all the fans. I mean, I heard that one couple, she made her husband go spend their anniversary at the Depp trial. I mean, there are people who are
talking about somebody whipped.
Oh my God!
It's like, do you want your marriage to last another 7 years? But the idea is that you've got people who it doesn't matter what he's done. They're going to support him, whether he did or did not do.
Are we going to see Johnny Depp riots this summer if this trial goes the wrong way?
Well, that's one of the points is that if he wins, he loses. Because if he wins and people perceive that he was an abusive spouse, then there's a campaign to bring him down in the public square. if he loses, then his supporters are backing him even more. Oh, poor Johnny. You know, he's such a nice guy. And, you know, I don't know if there's that same situation for Amber Heard.
Well, you know, if you look at, you know, the publications like the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and their opinion pages, there was an op-ed published last week that said that if Johnny Depp wins, it's the end of the Me Too movement. And so, and that was, I think that was the title of the op-ed, End of Me Too. And so the question then is, was Me Too worth it, right? And so it was Me Too proper, at least in this context. I think the pendulum has swung a little bit. It went back, it was one way that necessitated a Me Too movement. And I think now you've gone too far with cancel culture over the last couple of years. Now, whether he's the person that you want to champion as the victim of cancel culture, I'm not sure, because of what's come out, you know, at this trial.
I just don't think he's the poster boy for,
I
you
agree.
know,
No, definitely not.
For men who have been accused of, you know, abusing spouses. I think there's just too much gray area there.
And at the very least, we can all agree, this is not someone you would want your daughter married to. For all his money, all of his many homes and alpacas and wine collection, I would not want one of my daughters married to Johnny Depp. He's not a reliable partner. You can't be if you're on drugs like that.
Right.
And I'm sorry if that doesn't make me Team Johnny anymore, but it's the truth.
Were you Team Johnny?
I'm Team fairness and justice.
All right. Vinoo, are you Team Johnny?
Well said.
Are you Team Johnny?
I think that enough stuff. When I read last week, so I'll answer that question this way. When I was reading,
if you
all
want to
this
phrase
stuff,
it like that,
if you want to phrase it like that,
Johnny.
all the stuff that I was reading about what, you know, and the reaction from what I would consider the left media, and again, I consider myself a centrist, I thought was excessive in terms of this trial, that this is a referendum on domestic violence. No, it's not. It's between a couple of, like, Hollywood starlets, right? This isn't victims. I mean, these aren't victims in the traditional sense.
Well, they're extremely wealthy, but, you know, if some of these allegations true, they would be victims.
Yeah, but this is not what we're dealing with, right? So I started out as a prosecutor, and you saw some real victims, but you also saw at the same time many people who'd use the system to gain an advantage, right? So I've seen in my criminal defense practice, while 70% of my practice is white collar, the 30% is representing men who are, you know, being used, have this system being used against them by women who are using the criminal justice system to gain an advantage in their matrimonial case. As I mentioned last week, I've worked with so many divorce lawyers, I can't even count.
So you were actually believing Johnny Depp because do you believe that Amber Heard is basically a gold digger?
I think that was my impression until today, where I think that now I'm looking at this stuff, and what that Dr. Spiegel did was I think changed narrative. In fact, I take a quick look at some of the people, and I see people free Johnny. They're talking about canceling Dr. Spiegel, which means that his testimony struck a nerve with the Depp side. And you saw that in the reaction of Varghese, who looked flustered, even though she wasn't the one asking the questions. You saw that in Johnny Depp, taking off his glasses and trying to stare this guy down. But this guy just looked him right back, and eventually Johnny Depp started looking elsewhere.
Just looked him right back, took a swig of lemon lime Gatorade, and continued to question Johnny Depp's attorney.
A little product placement there between Gatorade and Vita Water. I want to get to the legal strategy right now. Because one of the things that happened last week, and when Camille Varghese, when she is the attorney questioning or cross-examining, or when she is the attorney on his side that's kind of in charge for that day, a lot of objections. Constant objection, to the point where people have noticed that there's a TikTok video about constant objections, and it's beginning to rattle Heard's attorney.
It did rattle her.
That's a strategy. That you just constantly object. And now she's getting a lot of the objections sustained, not overruled. So to the point where Heard's attorney is like almost afraid to ask a question.
I think that's the problem with Heard's attorney. And I said, I think her attorneys have done a terrible job. Amber Heard's attorneys. I think Varghese, her objections were proper. I didn't see an improper objection, and she's just on the money. You have to phrase, you know you're going up against a legal team that you have to assume is good. So therefore, you better have your questions written out It's direct examination in a way that's non-objectionable. As an attorney, when you're directing, you want to try to lead a little bit. You want to try to get out there, but you got to assume that there's going to be objections from the other side. And when there were, and the fact that this attorney, the elderly lady, for Amber Heard,
okay, she is like 60.
I'm just saying,
elderly. She's
compared
older.
compared to the way that she looks, Varghese is on the money, top, right, boom. Except today, Varghese looked upset.
But that could backfire on you too. If you object too much, the jury's going to think, hey, what is this attorney trying to pull? What is this attorney trying to keep me from hearing? And you could lose a jury. So it's
Except when the judge agrees with her. Repeatedly.
Yeah, but even still,
see, that's a relationship that's going too. And I want to ask about the judge's relationship with the two attorneys. I mean, after a trial goes on, I mean, this is the fifth week, right? After a trial goes on, how much does the judge show preference for either side?
I mean, she really shouldn't show any preference if she's a good judge. You got to be as objective as possible and respectful as possible. But look, some judges, you can't hide it. Sometimes you like one attorney better, or you find one attorney particularly grating. It's going to show, even on the look of your face.
Because
I don't think this judge has shown that, though.
I'm not an attorney.
Yeah, I think she's been good.
I'm not an attorney, but every time, Varghese says objection, 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 and there were a few times, I'm the armchair, sideline, kind of commentator here and think, oh, it's got to be overruled. And she said sustained. It's like, what? Why is this disparity between what she sustains and what she overrules? I mean, like half of what she objects to actually gets sustained.
She understands the rules of evidence. And so it seems like you have a judge that also understands rules of evidence. And, as a judge, if you're a judge, you should appreciate that. If you're looking at this from a point of view as you're never letting the other side get into a rhythm, right? And while what Ken mentioned is a real concern of letting, of being objectionable, one of the instructions the juries is given is every jury is given is do not hold anything personally against the lawyer. So if you hear the lawyer objecting, that person is doing their job. Don't read into whether I grant or whether I sustain or overrule an objection. It's just they're just doing their job. So if the jury remembers that, and if they're good, and I think they will be on summation, they'll say, hey, look, you may have heard me objection, but I did so for a purpose. So what's only before you is what was actually overruled or what came in. So I think she did a really good job. I mean, last week during Amber Heard. But today, it's a tale of a different
if I'm
tale of 2
watching,
weeks.
If I'm watching just like everybody else is watching, you're actually watching from the position of the jury. So you're actually watching with thinking in a jury mind. Is she making her point? Is she not? And there were some questions that were asked that I simply wanted the answer to and could not because she said object. And that started
that's going to bother you as a juror.
And that bothered me, and I'm wondering if that bothers the jury as well.
I think it does, but you also got to remember this. Every one of those objections, every one of those rulings, whether they're sustained or overruled, that's an issue that those attorneys have now created for appeal. That's right, we get an appeal here because it's definitely coming because both of these individuals, Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, they can afford a lengthy appeal process. And there's enough money at stake that whoever loses, if someone loses, they're going to appeal it.
No, the lawyers are going to win.
That's only the lawyers are going to win. That's only if there is a significant judgment given on damages to one party. Yeah. So if Johnny Depp wins, but there's only $1 in damages to him, he's not going to be able to
really appeal it.
He can try.
It's his reputation.
He can try, but it's not going to get him anywhere.
Realistically, how much money is actually going to be changing hands at the end of this trial?
Well, I think now, if today, I think that it could go the other way, towards Amber Heard.
I mean, I think Johnny Depp's got a they've definitely shown and demonstrated a lot of evidence to show that he at least lost out on that Pirates of the Caribbean 6 role, which was $22 million. So I could see that maybe coming down in a verdict.
Those 5 more Pirates movies that needed to be made.
Hey, I'm not a movie critic.
I think I've seen maybe the first 3, and after that I'm kind of, okay, it's nice, and how long can you drag this one out?
And we've made a movie on a theme ride, basically. Come on.
Okay, so what's going to happen this afternoon, and what should we look for? Vinoo?
Well, I think from Heard's point of view, and right before the lunch break, the attorney for Amber Heard said, I have some redirect. No, do not ask any more questions of Dr. Spiegel. Why open yourself up? Because Spiegel, put a beat down on Depp's lawyer this morning. Okay, put a beat down on him. Why would you even try to disturb that? Why bring him back? Just enjoy the moment. Go to the next thing. That's what I would recommend to Heard's lawyers.
Okay, what do you think?
Bring him back. He's great. The 2:30 show is totally different than the morning show. Dr. Spiegel might as well just be the judge in this case. He's asked more questions. I mean, it's crazy.
So, are we going to see Johnny Depp on trial on the testimony today? Are we going to see him on the stand this afternoon at all, or are they going to
talk that they're going to call him? There's talk that they're going to call him, but
I think that's a mistake.
Yeah, it's risky.
It's a big mistake.
Really risky
because they couldn't handle him the first time. Why are you calling him back? He made mincemeat of their lawyers, right? So Depp, the way that Spiegel crushed Depp's lawyer, Depp crushed Amber Heard's lawyers last week.
He is a likable guy. He really is.
It'd be a mistake to call him back.
Now, the fans are rabid for him. I mean, apparently he's scheduled to speak on Wednesday, or his testimony on Wednesday.
I never particularly liked him. I thought he was just, come on.
I mean, he's tapped into something special. This man is a movie star. He's not like the average human being. He's very charismatic.
It's like that movie, whatever the movie that said, I forget, it's like, I'm not an actor. I'm a movie star. That's a whole different world.
He is.
Him testifying or taking the stand again on Wednesday, 2 days before summation, what does that do for the case?
Well, they're going to call him, I believe, Amber Heard's team. They're planning to, they're talking about calling him and treating him as a hostile witness, which means that they would essentially conduct a cross-examination of him while on direct, meaning they're going to ask him a ton of yes or no questions, and they're going to try and, they're really going to try and box him in. But it didn't go so well the first time around, so I hope they've learned from some of those mistakes.
If I'm the judge, I'm not going to allow it, right? Like, to do what? What are you going to ask him as your witness that you weren't able to ask him the first time? If I'm Depp's team, I would object unless they feel that today went really badly and they need to shift again the trial in his favor.
Well, before we go, I want to ask about one thing that I didn't ask you before about Dr. Spiegel's testimony. Do you think the jury's eyes kind of glazed over as they got into the weeds on some of these issues around substance abuse and intimate partner violence, and they're going, what? I mean, right before lunch, too. I mean, it's like, oh, my goodness, what was that about?
No, I don't think so. And I'll tell you why, because this isn't like chemistry, right? While you're talking somewhat about, medical stuff and chemistry, he's talking about issues that people can relate to, right? Mm-hmm. People know about substance abuse. People know about the domestic partner violence. So this is very different. A lot of experts are dry and they're boring, and you're talking about, like, for example, the path of a bullet to cut it in, and then this meant this and whatever, and you got all these things. Not really interesting. A lot of it's boring, right? And especially these homicide trials, they're like very boring testimony from medical experts. But in this case, you're talking about stuff that people can relate to, and he did it in a very charismatic way.
He was entertaining.
He was absolutely entertaining. And then the sparring, he just beat down Depp's lawyer.
He was entertaining because he's a professional expert witness, a hired gun.
He's getting paid a lot of money.
And Depp's attorneys did not do enough to point that out.
Why didn't they ask him how much he was getting paid?
I can't tell you why, but I think they should have stuck to that traditional way that you cross an expert. Establish he's a hired gun, ask what he's getting paid, because I'm sure what he's getting paid for this one morning is way more than anyone in that jury makes probably in a month.
Yeah. Okay, real quick, just your predictions for the end of the trial. I mean, what do you think people will decide?
Well, if it just goes, unless there's another change today, if there's another change today, I'm with Team Amber at this point.
Really? How much money is she going to get, though? She's not going to get the $50 million, you don't think?
No, she counterclaimed.
I mean, $100 million. I'm sorry, $100 million.
No, I agree. At the end, she may get a nominal judgment.
Okay.
She may get to be in Aquaman 3. I don't know. But
look, I'm all for that.
We got to wrap it up. I think we're going to get back to the trial now. Is it okay? The trial is now back. They're back.